Nat Reeves is a master bassist whose dynamic, deeply supportive playing has been a cornerstone of the jazz world for over 40 years. A longtime collaborator with legends like Jackie McLean, Kenny Garrett, Pharoh Sanders, and Harold Mabern, Nat Reeves has also made his mark as a bandleader with acclaimed recordings such as State of Emergency and Blue Ridge. His musical journey, from early days in Virginia learning by ear to establishing himself in New York's jazz scene, reflects a lifelong dedication to groove sound and artistic growth. As both a performer and educator, Nat Reeves continues to inspire with his profound musicality, unwavering commitment to the jazz tradition. And we are live. So good to see you, Nat. Thanks so much for talking with me today.
Abe, thank you very much for asking me to be part of your program, Rabbit Hole Sessions.
Yeah, well, I guess a good question to start would be how are you first and foremost?
I'm doing well. Everything's going well. I'm busy playing the bass, and actually, I feel more like I'm my I'm a student to myself. I'm teaching myself now. I'm my own teacher, which we should always be, but
I
this
mean,
one
the journey never stops, right?
never stops.
You know, Nat, the first thing I wanted to talk to you about was we've had, I listed many musicians you played with, but in the beginning, getting your career started, who was really the most informative that put you on sort of the trajectory to the path that you went down? Was there a certain mentor or someone you started playing with in the beginning that, set you off on the right foot?
Well, I think to get to that question, I would have to say that my association with Kenny Garrett and Tony Reedus and Mulgrew Miller at the time that I lived in New York was very important to me because I could see from all of them how much they were dedicated to the art form of jazz improvisation. And I just saw so much potential in being close to them. I learned so much from Kenny and Mulgrew and Tony Reedus. And it just started to kind of give me an idea of what it would take to be on that same playing field as they were on.
Did you feel that they were more intense or maybe a little more serious about the music or just had a different approach that made you feel that way? Or was it just getting together with them and just something clicked?
Well, when I met them, they were all playing, performing.
Mhm.
Uh, Tony Reedus was playing with Woody Shaw. I think Mulgrew was playing with Woody Shaw. Kenny Garrett was playing with the Ellington Band. So they were already on the scene, and the three of them lived together. And we met at a time when I came to New York. I met Kenny Garrett at a jam session at Fuku Nada's home. So we became really good friends. And I just, I learned a lot from them. And the opportunity to meet Sonny Stitt came from that collaboration because both Kenny and Mulgrew Miller had recommended me to go to Japan with Sonny Stitt. That was my first tour, and it was his last tour. That was in 1982. So my first opportunity as a player playing internationally was with Sonny Stitt, and it was the end of his career. So he came home, and I came home, and that's how I met Jackie McLean. Because Jackie McLean had heard about me, and he had heard I'd gone to Japan with Sonny Stitt, so he invited me to his home, and we would listen to some of the last playing he did. And that's when my mentorship started with him. Like, didn't immediately play with him. That was a 5 year mentor commitment.
When you think about the word mentor, some people can see it as they were around somebody who was just positive and just gave them love and support, but there was also mentors who were, very hard on their proteges. Was it a little bit of both, or was it just, he just embraced you, Jackie?
Well, I would think to be a mentor, you'd have to give constructive criticism as well as criticism to help you. So there's nothing easy if you want to make the commitment to having a great mentor. And that was something you had to make a commitment with the great Jackie McLean. He was so great as a person to me because he took in a lot of space where there was no father. So he was like a father figure. He made sure that we had what we needed, and he made sure that we knew that what the commitment was we were making to him and how much work we had to put into it. So I mean, to play jazz and to have played jazz maybe back in the '80s when I was just starting was a little different from now. You know, you have a lot of schools now. I
Hmm.
mean, my school was on the bandstand, so you learn a lot, and and you start listening to the great players that people like great Jackie McLean played with. So you had a reference as to how good you needed to be and what your role is as the bassist in the band. You the bass was the most important instrument when you were traveling. The bass, as you can see in the back, that case, the instrument went everywhere because the sound of the band had a lot to do with the sound of the bass.
Hmm.
Different from today. Today, you get a bass as you travel, or you convert your bass into a travel bass where you take the neck off and make it into a something easier to transport and easier to move around. But transport, move around, and probably a little less on the expenses when you're traveling at the airport.
When you think about coming up in the 80s versus today, it makes me think about how the music came to be in a time where there just wasn't as much distraction. The technology wasn't what it is today. But even in the 80s compared to now, it was a totally different world in that way. Did it feel more special, you think, because it was more about the music and just not as much distraction in terms of technology and that sort of thing?
Well, I think because a lot of the musicians were still alive, you could go right to the source.
Hmm.
There wasn't, we didn't have a lot of, you know, ways to learn songs. We learned from each other,
Hmm.
and then the real books came out, and that was a whole nother thing that was helpful. But I think there was a lot less distraction. You had to make a commitment to each other. Facebook was actually the interaction you had in person.
Hmm.
And I think you had to be, as Professor McLean would always say, you have to be a man first. So you learn your skills about your man being a person and how to support each other because playing jazz is such a democratic type of thing that you have to work together to make it sound good. And we were traveling. There was cash. There was so many things that changed everything there. So there weren't a lot of schools,
Hmm.
and so all the players who were professional would have bands, and then when they needed musicians, well, say let's say someone needed a bass player, you might have 8 or 9 bass players auditioning for that position, and we're all in the same room at the same time.
Wow.
So you get to meet each other. It's more of a, you would meet each other, and you were best friends with the bass player. I'm my friends. We'd go together to places. There was no, not quite as much animosity that can show up
There's
today.
more animosity, you think, today?
I would think so because there's a lot ways to make that happen on social media.
Unquestionably.
Yeah.
And the music has evolved so much in even in the last 20 10 years, 5 years. What excites you on about what's going on today in the music?
Oh, I love seeing all the new players. I love to see everybody carry the torch. I'm still in the past somewhat. There's a lot of music that I recorded that I'm just getting a chance to listen to. My favorites are still some of the music from the 50s and 60s. That generation. I love
Mhm.
the way they dressed. I miss the dress. I like to dress up. I think that part, the cats back in the day always dressed up. So I take the music serious when I see a very well dressed musician. It doesn't have to be a suit and tie. It's just a concept. You got to always make sure that you have a good concept in whatever you're doing. As you know, like as I look at you, beautiful jacket on. You know what I'm
I have
saying?
many jackets.
Of
It's
course.
yeah.
Yeah. That's part of that's who you are.
Yeah. We hear with our eyes when we go to see music.
That's what
So
our Blakey used to say. And Professor McLean, Jackie said that to us. They see you before they hear you. When you walk into that room, people make you say hello to people. They decided already if they like you.
yeah.
Oh, that guy, I like him. Then you go up and play. That's even added more.
Yeah.
And your communication with people, saying hello and feeling confident. I just returned from Washington, D.C., which is one of the areas where I started to learn to play. And I felt so good being in Washington playing. such an exciting audience, and playing with musicians that are experienced as well as playing with the younger musicians. I just think it's great now because I have the time to really enjoy it more than I did back in the day. I was, trying to figure out who I was and make a living at the same time.
And you also spent a big part of your career as an educator. And when it comes to being a performer and educator, it's a balancing act of two different worlds, I would think. How do you think those two worlds influenced each other?
Well, for me, I think because of the education, there was Jackie McLean. So he was there. So we had him, and he paid attention to his students. He wanted his students to be part of what he was doing. So it was a very well put together way of learning. All of his students ended up in some way or another being either in his band or moving on to another great band. Example being like Steve Davis going to Art Blakey at the age of maybe 19 and having not Abe Burton, having Eric McPherson on the band. He was a student at the
Mhm.
time. And you had Alan Palmer, who was a student at the time. So when everything was going well and Jackie was alive, there wasn't so much administrative work involved in. But as I became full time and I had to deal more with the administration, things changed a little because you see what the bottom line is and as far as an artist and a school, it's whether the student can live up to his or her expectations and how can that person move on from that school onto the big field of playing. And the Hart School was always a good place for that. We had a good location between New York and Boston, and people were coming. I think in the 80s, students were, maybe they still are, but they were going to schools because the teachers were there. A lot of times the students have to go to the schools that they can afford now. You put all these, you know, applications out, see who you can, will take it. But I'm not teaching now. I did teach about 39 to 40 years, wasn't that many years full time, but there was some full time years that were very challenging. And I learned a lot because as a teacher, I wanted to be part of the student. So I wanted to be the bass player in my students' ensembles. I wanted to play bass because I wanted the students to see me learn a song and see me have some concerns about the changes so that it's not me just looking at them telling them how to play,
Mhm.
you know, because you got to make friends and you have to be a mentor and a role model. See, I had a lot of role models too. Those role models that you don't necessarily meet. Those are people you see or you hear. So back to the 80s, in the 80s, we had live performance and radio.
Mhm.
That was kind of the way you had to get your information. Buy your records, listen to the radio. There was no other streaming at that time. And we learned from each other. You have to teach each other. I like to learn a song from the piano, having someone teach it to me
Mhm.
so I can find out how I can make it more than what I see on the page, make it more fun. I could try this. Oh, that didn't work. I could try things. So now that I have time home, I'm not teaching, I can work on things now.
Are you playing more piano now because you
Not
have
really.
free
I,
time?
I have a piano here. I never learned the piano, but I could find notes. I can find out, oh, let's see how that bass line goes. Let's
Mhm.
see. So just how the piano is set up, because it's so different from the bass. That note doesn't move on the piano. The bass has no pitch really. I mean, it's so just for clarity for my intonation. And you sit down and write little bass lines, and then I get help from the other musicians.
Is there, yeah,
Because today, sorry, you go
oh,
ahead.
as far as the education, there's just one more thing I wanted to ask you. As far as when you were teaching and being a mentor, were there certain things, concepts you have about life or music, aside from the technical parts of playing music, that you really tried to pass on to your students that were more personal?
Well, each student was different.
Mhm.
So you could have a syllabus or have you know, a way you wanted things to be, but sometimes you have to slow back, slow down, and see where that student is at. and try to nourish them, show them what they already know and add to it. If you just come in real heavy, you can discourage a lot of students.
Oh, I've
And
experienced that.
yeah, you have to kind of like bring it down a little bit,
Yeah.
and find out what makes that student feel comfortable talking to you and being with you, because that's how you learn. If you start to learn from someone you're afraid of, or that has to them than you can handle.
Oh, I agree. I agree.
So yeah, the students to me are very important, and I would always try to slowly or quickly evaluate where they were and think about how to help them. And a lot of it for me was just teaching them how to listen, and always record yourself and go back and listen to it. Listen to yourself when you don't like it. You know, listen. So I record everything as much as I can. I always record. I have over 300 mini discs here from the all the way back from the probably the 90s when the mini disc came out, and then there's cassette tapes. I'm still looking for a cassette tape of Sonny Stitt, but I haven't found it yet. But showing the student that how you are a student as well, and embracing them, because I have students today that I had, or one particular student that was my student in the year 2000. He calls me every day, sometimes twice a day, and we motivate each other. It's a motivation. The phone is not going to motivate you. It might, but it might discourage you too. You look at it and go, "Oh my God, everybody's working but me."
I mean, the way you're talking about always being a student, it's when I hear people say it, it just makes me so happy. Someone who's such a accomplished musician as yourself, who's been doing it for decades. When you say you still are, like I believe it
Yeah,
100%.
yeah, because my focus now can go more into my sound, my equipment, my bass, you know, all of that. At first, it was more like you got a routine. You just got to keep doing it. Now I slow down with all of that, and I try to make sure that I practice as if playing as if I don't know what it is a little
Mhm.
bit, and listen to it, be simple as I can get, then try to see how many ways I can do it. Like,
When it comes to your approach for practicing and preparing for gigs today, how has that changed over the years, you think?
well, we used to didn't have time to practice. I mean, especially if you're teaching, if you're at a university and you're teaching at the school 4 or 5 days a week, you're up at 6 o'clock, 7. You teach all day. You get home about 4:35. If you got enough energy, maybe you're practicing. You play a little. That's why I found it to be important to play in my class, because then I'm playing, and in the morning when I get in, I can practice, get ready. So the school helped me with my preparation. Knowing that you have to be prepared, being pushed out there to do something you're not comfortable with, all kinds of situations with making a speech, and how to do a concert, how to prepare a concert, how to get that student organized, because it's a lot of pieces to it. You don't just pick the bass up and play it. Don't miss something. The bass is what I get to after everything's in place.
When it comes to your philosophy of the bass and how it's changed over the years now that you're focusing on it, do you think about the tone and the time differently now?
Yeah, because the strings were different then, and there was not quite as much amplification. The bass was set up different. In the 60s, or back in the day, as they say, they were using gut strings. So that G string was a big string, that D string. You could cover a lot of your bass playing with those two strings. But now the strings are made different. The G and the D strings are smaller. So a lot of bass players still have a tendency to play a lot on the smaller side of the bass,
Mhm.
not the low end. Because I had one of my band members say to me, he said, "Hey, son," he looked at the fingerboard. He said, "You see that part of the bass? Don't play that. If I want that, I'll hire a cello player."
Right.
So you start thinking about the bass differently, because it could be set up different. You got better luthiers. They've come a long ways with the setup, the way the neck is slanted, and the how to make it comfortable. It's a lot more to it now. I found a builder, someone who builds basses, to do my work. So he He's very serious about it, and it makes me happy. So moving from that part of the bass, then you want to amplify. If you got a really nice bass, you don't want to put it into a $300 amplifier. So I took my time finding out what was the best out here, and now I'm part of that family. It's so much fun. I have an acoustic electric bass I'm playing, but I really started on electric bass.
Oh, okay.
I was when I started in the late '60s, early '70s, we were playing a lot of Motown, whatever came out on the radio, because that's all we had was the radio. And I lived in an area that had mostly soul music. You catch jazz early in the morning. From a distance, you hear a little bit of it, and then it disappears. That made me intrigued about, wow, what is that? You hear it on the way. Because I grew up in an area which is kind of in the middle of the mountains.
Yeah.
So there weren't no jazz clubs or anything like that.
I think something has to catch your attention, whether it's you, something has to spark your interest in the music right away. Like I remember when I was like 17 years old or 16, I was watching this show called Studio Jams, and I saw and Pat Martino was playing guitar. I was at like a sleepover and just with a bunch of friends, and I was just like, whoa, like what is that? Did something catch your attention that you
Well,
specifically remember? One of those moments?
you mean as a beginning in the music,
Starting out.
starting off?
Yeah.
It wasn't the music. You know what it was? It was
Hmm.
the birds. I was a little kid and I heard all this singing, all this music. It's just like, wow, what is that? So my grandfather saw all that interest in me, and he built this little sanctuary for me in the backyard. He built all these little bird houses with a koi pond or little pond. I want you to learn. So I knew what the bluebirds sounded like and what the wrens. But it was the birds. So it was nature because I lived in the country.
Hmm.
Then it was the sound of the train, the train whistle. And my grandfather said to me, always on time, most important thing in a person's life. Always be on time and always go with the flow. So don't get stagnant. So those things. And then it was the rhythm of the wash machine,
Hmm.
the Maytag wash machine. Had that boom, 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 boom. So my grandfather built me these rocking chairs, and he saw that I had rhythm. The next thing I know, he got me tap shoes. So he kind of got me into rhythm. Then he made me realize that sports is timing. Everything's timing. Fishing is timing. Yeah, it's timing. So he played the guitar, the banjo, the mandolin, all kinds of instruments he would make. So one day, as he would play in the house, he handed me his guitar, and I didn't like it because he had those little strings on. So I took the little strings off and turned it into a bass.
Hmm.
So my best friend Larry Scott and I, he bought a set of drums. We decided we were going to be in the band. Join the band. We didn't know very much about it, but I think we just, when you got that drive and you're like a sponge, and
Hmm.
we were hearing the music on the radios, and we'd go into the room and learn all the parts. So we had a band called the Dynatones, and we played all down all the fraternities and all kinds of school parties. We were the talk of the town. So as I became more interested in the bass, that's when I discovered, excuse me, Stanley Clark and Jaco Pastorius, because they came out with their own records. So I kind of came into the music from a fusion. But the fusion guys introduced me to the jazz guys. Like, Stanley might have Chick on his record or Herbie. So it came in from that direction. But the inspiration came from being able to do something not everybody could do.
Yeah, exactly.
That was an inspiration for me. It's like everybody can't do this. So
I
that
agree
made
with
me,
you. I understand what you're saying. I remember
yeah,
being a kid and in elementary school, like I wasn't an athlete. I didn't quite know where to fit in, but then I got the guitar and it was like, then I
yeah,
brought it into school and that was it. Like,
that was
whoa.
it. That's
Yeah.
your friend, man. That to me was the inspiration. And then knowing that if you get good at this, you could go places, you make records. Because I used to dream of all that as a kid down in Virginia. Owning an amp was a big deal for me. Maybe one day I'll have my own amp. Maybe one day I'll have a car. It was all a dream. And doing those dreams, I just started to meet the right people.
Hmm.
You know, people are. I think the energy of people is very magnetic. You can put people together to play, and it'll sound good. But it's nothing like playing with your buddies. You go out and have something to eat. Man, let's go play. It's so exciting. And that's where I'm at now. And it was always like that for me. I mean, there's always those hard tours, but
The the band that you played with, I have to kind of talk about it because it's so important to me personally. Real definitely influenced the way I started writing music and listening to music when I was
mhm,
at Berkeley. Just kind of went down a rabbit hole of listening to different things and discovered the band with you, Kenny Garrett, Kenny Kirkland, and Jeff Tain Watts, and just
mhm.
kind of really just diving deep into that. And to me, like, I just want to say thank you for, contributing to that music. I feel like that music was such an important part of the 90s. Was there, when you talk about friends, I have to assume that there was a close friendship between the four of you. And even when you watch some
Yeah.
of those videos, it seemed you guys were buddies.
Well, you know what? What this is kind of the way I remembered it. So Jack Kenny and I were really close because we had been on other bands. And Jeff and Kenny Kirkland were both dear friends because they were out in California at the Jay Leno's show.
Mhm.
So Kenny had a tour. So we went to California. And that was the first time I really actually met Kenny Kirkland and Jeff Watts. I had met Jeff before in Atlanta when I was playing with Jackie and Walter Bishop Jr. and AT. He was playing down there. So we went out there and we had a tour, and they were friendship. They were tight. Me and Jeff became friends. Kenny, it's just great. I still talk to Jeff all the time. We just did a recording the other day together. It was a special time, and the energy was different. Even the downbeat was more powerful. Like those downbeats were like, bam. And
Yeah.
I would feel like, oh my
Well,
goodness, I'm on a boat, I'm holding on, and I got skis, and I'm just holding on, holding on. And then I realized that, okay, you gotta get in there, bass man.
yeah.
And you gotta take this and run with it. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot from Kenny Garrett. He's a great teacher. He taught you everything from the piano. And of course he would give you charts, but I learned a lot from Kenny. A lot. We did a lot of touring, a lot from the great Jackie McLean as a teacher.
And
Pharoh,
festivals too, like those big,
oh
big
yeah,
festivals.
big festivals. I mean, we went out with, like I said to you, at Pat Metheny
Oh, right.
Festival.
Yeah. Yeah. This today.
That was an unbelievable
Oh,
festival because that was a recording that Kenny had did music of John Coltrane with Pat Metheny. I think it was Rodney Whitaker, I think was on the bass. For some reason, I ended up doing tours, and God, we had a
Pursuance, I
great time.
think the album's called, if I'm not.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes. And we did. Pat and I used to when we landed over in Norway. So we went from Norway all the way to Sardinia, Italy, and not once was my base on the airplane, except flying from JFK to Norway. Every, everything else was by truck.
Wow.
I would just show up, bass is tuned up, pick it up, play it, put it down. It was packed up. See it at the next place.
Wow.
I remember some really really high end times in the music where there was enough money to make it okay. I don't think I ever drove to the airport when I played with Kenny Garrett or Jackie McLean. Jackie always had a car for us. Kenny always sent a van to pick me up. Sometimes the 18 passenger van was just me and the bass. That's the hard. The bass was very important to the tour. And then it changed where you just show up and play whatever you got.
Took the human component out. You know what I mean? Just these little things like that you're talking about. It just sounds like it makes it feel a little different.
Well, you got to scramble to try to. Nobody cares about the bass. You go, oh man, this bass is rough. The audience don't care. They want to hear you play. So you learn how to. Okay, sometimes you might take a set of strings, or you might take a microphone, or you get there early and you do your little adjustments. Today, I think the basses are much better because everybody's using basses. I mean, even Mr. Carter, I'm sure when he goes certain places, I'm sure he gets the bass brought to him, but it's not like you travel with the bass. We all traveled with that bass, man. It's like the bass case. I could never get rid of that. No way.
How old is that case right there? The one that we can see.
That's the second case I had. So that case, let me see, I don't have a stick, but it's the David Gage case. It had to be the 90s. I got it. 90s, because around 2000, things kind of changed, start using different bases. But so let's say if I move somewhere, or if I want to go somewhere, I don't have to worry about the bass. I just put it in there and let somebody else handle it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I have a pretty good investment on this bass I have. So I want to always keep it good. Yeah, it's been quite a great time
It
playing
looks like
music.
it has some personality to it. People
Yeah,
get to see the video.
yeah.
So, and now that you just talked about that you were in DC in the, I believe with Steve Davis, right?
Yes, yes.
And I was fortunate enough to hear you play with Eric Alexander and George Cables and Jonathan
hmm
Blake maybe about a month ago. Are there other things coming up in the upcoming weeks or months that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, Sunday I'm playing with Steve again, Davis, and Rick Jermison plays the drums. He's from Virginia. I met him through Larry Willis. And we're going to play here in town at Center Church. And then after that, I'm going to Virginia. I'm playing with a great drummer, great chef, great radio personality. His name is Jay Sennett. Jay has his own TV show, YouTube show, Cooking with Jay. Jay does radio, jazz show, and Jay plays really great drums. And he's bringing me to Virginia to perform. That's sort of the week before my birthday. My 70th birthday is this year, May 27th. So my wife's gonna take me to Martha's Vineyard.
Oh, I've been there one time. You got to take the ferry to get there.
Yeah, I was introduced to Martha's Vineyard by Jackie McLean. He had a place up there, and my wife and I got married up there, and we go up there as often as we can. Almost every year we went for a long time, and then we started going to other places. But that's my favorite. I go there and chill and get all kinds of ideas for music because it's quiet.
Yeah, it's its own world. I
It's
went there
another.
for a gig. We got there, we did the gig, and went back like 2 hours later. We didn't get to enjoy it, but it's a special
Uh,
place.
yeah. So were you there for the Martha's Vineyard Festival?
No, no, this was this one library was doing a summer concert series on
Uh-huh.
Thursdays. So
Uh-huh.
we went out we were up in Massachusetts, so we went and we got to the gig an hour before. We played the gig, got on the next ferry out of there.
Wow, that's quick. Yeah, that's
But
a
this
great
is
place.
you gotta grind it out if you wanna play, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just comes as natural, you know. After this, let me see. What am I doing? Got a couple of recordings coming out. Summer is not so busy, which is okay for me.
Yeah.
It gets busy. I know I will be playing with Sarah Hanahan, who I recorded with recently with Jazz at Lincoln Center with Jeff Payne Watts.
Oh, nice.
And that was a really nice thing. So there's a lot of music out there. And I'm at the place now where I don't have to feel so anxious about it. You know, I was that tape to you, what was that, 30 years ago? Almost?
90s, the one you sent me today,
Yeah, almost.
96.
Yeah.
I was looking it up because I was wondering how old Pat Metheny was there. He was
Mhm.
42.
Yeah. I was
Uh,
probably right around there too.
it was
He's probably,
amazing.
it was amazing. That was an amazing tour. I did some things with Sting that were amazing because of Kenny Kirkland. Kenny was in the band.
You
I
said
mean,
you said one quick thing. You said that you're not as you're not as anxious as now. Was there a time when you were younger where it was more stressful, just putting yourself out there and with opportunities?
well,
Was there a difficult time?
I didn't have to do any of that because it was already there. I
Mm.
mean, everybody I played with had a manager, tour manager, booking agent. So I had to be ready. So if I didn't matter. You're a band. You're a band. You have like, let me see, let's say Michael Brecker's band was always out. Then Kenny, McCoy Tyner, you see Freddie out there. I mean Woody Shaw. It was just you were in it.
Yeah,
So you're in it. You gotta be in it.
yeah.
Now I'm freelancing. People call me. I can say, well, just recently I got a call to play in New York at a club. six Saturday nights in a row. But I can't do it. It's not
Yeah.
enough money.
Yeah.
It's nice to be able to say that. Because for me, having a bass, first of all, you got to get there. I don't drive at night after the gig. I don't do that anymore.
It's
I
not
did
worth it.
No, I did all that. I've seen, I'm coming home half asleep now. So you got to have that. So it's always, usually if it's in New York or anywhere, there's always a hotel involved, and you look at what they're paying you, you almost better stay home.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, but
Mhm.
it's what it is, though, right? It's just
Yeah,
what it
that's
is.
what it is.
Yeah.
But I did have some recent, really great performances come up. I went to the Sibelius Music Academy in Finland, and I stayed at John Sibelius's home in Finland,
Oh,
and
wow.
I went over as a teacher, educator, and I spent my time with their jazz faculty, which was so much fun. We played 4 or 5 nights, well, not 4 or 5 nights. We played 5 days in a row, 6, 7 hours a day.
Whoa.
So we had breakfast made for us, catered. Everything's catered. You play a few hours, and you take a coffee break. Then you have lunch made for you. Play some more, and then you come back, take another coffee break, and then you play again. Then you have dinner, and you're done.
It's like
And
heaven.
it was heaven. The property, the place we stayed was beautiful. I got a chance to take some of the music I had recorded with different bands. So I took some of Kenny's music, Eric Alexander's music, Jackie
Mhm.
McLean's music, Harold Mabern's music. I could take the music and play that with them. So I'm going to do something similar to that in June when I go out to Las Cruces, New Mexico. So I could do more things as just me.
No, it sounds like you're having a good
Yeah,
time.
I'm having a good time. I can afford to do it. I can play if I want to. If I don't want to, stay in the house and chill. I'm fine. I'm very happy.
Yeah, this has been so fantastic. Nat, thanks so much for taking the time to speak with me
You're
today.
welcome. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah.
Really. Yeah.
Well, we got to meet in person too, you
Yeah,
know.
that's what I mean. Yeah. It was nice to see you in the audience and to meet your friends, and it's a good time.
Yeah, man. Thanks so much.
You are welcome. I hope to play with you soon.
We'll make it happen.
Okay. Okay. And anytime you want to talk, just dial it in, because we could do some listening sessions. I could bring you in and we can listen to some music, because I got music no one's heard, especially from Japan. Tons of stuff.
Oh, we have
You
to
know,
do that.
yeah. Do you know Randy Johnson? So Randy and I have a bunch of albums. I know it's time done, right?
Well, no, well, I was gonna press stop, and then
Mhm.
we'll this is for the audience. The conversation continues off the recording. So we're gonna click off and say goodbye to them.